because at the end of the day, I believe that your religion should be fun.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I believe, is your
Yeah.
religion should be so fun that you wanna do it, and that you would
Right.
never think about killing another person, silencing them, hurting them, or insulting them. Like, you're just so busy and happy worshiping whatever that
Mhm.
you're just like, so
Mhm.
it's time to take responsibility for our own spiritual paths and
Yeah.
not, just outsource that to some Walmart of religion.
What is up, everyone? Welcome or welcome back to my channel. Welcome if this is your first time. I am here with Bella for another interview on my series, the Religion to Occult interview podcast video series that I've been doing. This is now the 5th interview. And I have a subscriber friend here with me who goes by the Red Lady Veronica. So we are going to just jump right into it. And this is an opportunity for her to tell her story of growing up religious, and whatever religion that was, and how over time, her beliefs have changed to form the foundation maybe of where you are now. So I will go ahead and just do, first of all, I thank you again for just being open and willing to do this interview. I will say, if any other subscribers are interested, if you guys are seeing these videos and enjoying them, then please reach out to me and I'm happy to schedule something with you. I think it's been a great opportunity for people to tell their story, and I think other people are enjoying hearing them. So all right, so Veronica, that's what I'll refer to you as in this video. So let's get right into it. So what religion did you grow up in?
I grew up Catholic.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So was it like regular Catholic, or was it like a certain sect or cult or branch of Catholicism?
It's like the kind of Catholic that is tied to ethnicity.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like how sometimes people say that Catholics are the most lenient sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's because it has to do with, well, I'm Irish Catholic.
Okay.
So I do this way.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, I grew up in a Hispanic community. So everyone's Catholic by default. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of Catholic that I grew up with. So it's intertwined with culture, it's intertwined with like cultural identity, like where you come from, like if you're Mexican, there's a lot of Catholics there.
Sure.
And yeah, so that's the kind of style of Catholic that I grew up in.
Okay. Very cool. So, I guess you grew up in a Catholic family too. Did you go to church like every Sunday? Like what was the routine like for you growing up Catholic? Like church every Sunday or more than once a week? How active were you guys in that religion?
Um, I would say it was only once a week. It was only on Sundays, but I did go to Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with being Hispanic and being Catholic is like Christmas is a big thing, and there's like a 9-day prayer that you do leading up to, like you do it together. It's called La Novena.
Okay.
And so there's things like that were like kind of like cool and ritualistic, that I actually, that's like, I feel like what got me into the occult, you know what I mean? It's kind of
Interesting.
like the gateway drug, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like there were always those kind of extra little holidays, like Three Kings Day, January 6th,
Mm-hmm.
and different things. But it was pretty typical in that it was still grounded in like um, just enough consumerism for it not to be uh like completely about religion. We still did like Christmas. Like we
Yeah.
had like the Hispanic version, which is Niño Dios, like baby Jesus brings you gifts,
Hmm.
and there was Santa Claus.
Interesting.
So yeah, it wasn't like super strict like some other kids I knew, like they were like Jehovah's Witness. Like I saw that as very, very strict compared to my upbringing because
Yeah.
we still like did things. So yeah, that's what I mean. Kind of like there's like that kind of casual Catholicism that comes with like, well, I'm only Catholic because I'm from blank country or whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Gotcha. Hmm. That's I hadn't heard about the baby Jesus bringing gifts too. I guess since I didn't grow up in like the Hispanic version, but is there a difference between that and Santa bringing gifts? Like, does he bring gifts on a different day or a different time, or do they both just like join in together and teamwork the gifts, or how does that work?
In my imagination, it's funny that you mentioned that because I did see it like a teamwork because it didn't make any sense to me. Like
Yeah.
I was like, wait, how could a baby know what I want and like bring me gifts? And that like that confused me so much. So like
Right.
the thing with the baby Jesus is supposedly he comes at midnight and brings you gifts.
Okay.
And then Santa Claus, is like in the morning. Like it's
Hmm.
like the whole fantasy is like if you wake up early enough, you might see him like
Right.
you know, it's like, but like with baby Jesus, it's supposedly overnight. So what my parents would do, mostly my mom and my aunt, they would like distract us at midnight. We would stay up all night.
Uh-huh.
Like it's a thing to stay
Yeah.
up all night because also Hispanics celebrate more the 24th anyway than the
Okay.
25th. It's
Right.
like that's like the point of the party is to like wait all night.
Yeah.
But as a kid, you have to get distracted so that you're not like staring at the Christmas tree the whole
Right.
night so that your parents can't like put the gifts there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That must be kind of challenging for the parents to like to distract you enough to like sneak the gifts under the tree. I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah. So how long were you going to Catholic church for? Like from a kid till teenage years, or just what was that timeline?
Um, it was just associated with something like I had to do.
Mm,
So it was like my whole, uh, up till I was 18 type of life.
okay.
But I remember over time, my mom just kind of like she was cool about it. I remember she used to say God's cool because I was like mom, if I don't know what to give up for Lent, like is God going to get mad? And she's like God's cool. Like so like I remember over time she was like if you don't want to go with me to church anymore, that's fine. You can choose. You can kind of choose or whatever.
Mm,
But like the things were still there, like our cultural stuff.
yeah.
But the fact that like I guess she could see that she enjoyed going to church more than I did.
Mm,
And me and my cousin, who was like my sister growing up, and my sister, it
mm,
was like, um, we just weren't as like into it. So I feel like maybe around high school it started to dwindle. But
mm,
interestingly enough, I went through this weird phase in college where I suddenly, well, it makes sense now why I
mm.
thought this, but for some reason I was convinced that I had to be Christian to make money. And I joined this like born again Christian thing, which was completely Americans, very different from my understanding of Christianity, which was in Spanish.
Mhm.
So the born again Christian thing was in my view for like a very small amount of time, but then it felt really icky and weird.
Mm,
So that was around age like uh 19,
mhm.
and it was also a response to some traumatic events because I felt like if I could distance myself from people by using like this religion of like, oh well, I can't have sex before marriage, like get away from me, or like I can't do this
Mm,
or that, whatever. I felt like I used that as like almost like a barrier.
mhm.
So once I realized like how weird all this was, and how I didn't resonate with the people
Mm.
that I met that were like, trying to convince me to be part of their faith and stuff, I was like, I definitely started to get curious about other things.
Yeah, gotcha. So before that curiosity developed, did you ever believe wholeheartedly or try to believe like what you were being told in church?
Yeah, I feel
That's
why
Bella.
are you
Yeah.
laughing? She's answering
So
for me.
bad.
She's like, yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
get it.
Right.
Um, I always like knew there was like these people called atheists, and I was
Mm.
like always curious like what that was like. And I remember envisioning in myself and being like, could I ever not believe in God? And I remember immediately feeling like no, like I can't.
Mm.
Like God, I felt always felt like God is a permanent part of me.
Mm.
But that definition would change. Well, I wouldn't say change. I would say it expanded.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So that aspect of it, and like that feels very like permanent,
Mm-hmm.
even still, and that would transform. And then the Jesus aspect of it was like also a response to fear. Like I
Mm.
was like, I remember I was like afraid of the dark, and like I was afraid to like go to the bathroom by myself and like take a shower sometimes because I saw like the Goosebumps movie and it like freaked me
Mm.
out, and I thought the dummy was after me, and I would always picture like Jesus was with me, like, and then
Mm.
I would like go away. So like I started to recognize how it's really in the imagination how one can
Mm-hmm.
self-soothe. And so that was kind of a little, I would say, a foreshadowing for me of definitely getting into something else, something
Yeah.
more occult, because I'm like, wait, is that the element that makes the magic happen? It was like
Mm.
always a question in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely visualization, and calling on a spirit more or less to protect you in this time of need, when you're having those fears, it sounds like. That's interesting because in one of my other interviews I had with a Catholic lady, she didn't subscribe to really the like specific Catholic teachings, but she subscribed, like, she always believed in God, and like she always knew that God was real, whether it was like the God that, and that she was connected to it. And I can relate to this myself too, because I grew up in Anglican church, and I mean, I questioned so many things, but I never questioned if God existed or not.
Right.
But it just, to me, became a skewed identification or identity of God, because I was like, as I distanced myself from Christianity, I was like, okay, it became hard for me to redefine who God was, if that makes sense. Like, because I didn't like the idea of having the same God that I grew up with that I have now. Like, that God has evolved in time as I have evolved. And but at the same time, going back to what you said too, like, I never like really questioned, because I'd heard about atheism, and I just didn't really resonate with that. For a while I would identify as like agnostic, because I was like,
Right.
I know something exists, but I just don't know what it is. And yeah, and so that, it's just interesting how these beliefs and these thoughts and whatever we feel internally like evolve with time. Were there any extreme practices in this religion that you grew up with? Did you experience anything extreme or even traumatic? Like, where did you face any trauma? And don't go into that as much as you want. If there's something you don't want to talk about, of course, no pressure. But yeah, but did you just experience anything that instilled like deep programming that was hard to unlearn, or anything that just instilled a lot of fear, any traumatic experiences? Just however you want to answer that.
Yeah. I would say the fact that I mentioned that the Hispanic culture and Catholicism are like intertwined,
Mm-hmm.
even in the language that you speak. It's very hard to be like non-binary, but I'm sure people have figured it out, like how to speak, non-binarily in Spanish. But everything really is male, female. Everything's
Right.
like ojalá means I hope to God. Like it's embedded in the language, similar to us. Like we say, oh my God, and like God willing, and
Yeah.
Jesus, we say
Yeah.
stuff like that. But like the fact, I feel like that's where the toxicity really like leaks in, because nobody's actually, not nobody, but like it's like one of those things where things get used when it's convenient. And there's a stereotype about Catholicism that there's like the guilt trip, right? So
Mm-hmm.
parents use things like, for example, like, I think it's a toxic belief that, it's always just what you're like, respecting your elders no matter what, like honor thy mother and thy father, because I feel like a lot of abuse
Yeah.
um gets like goes under the radar because of that, because it's like, well, I'm your blah blah blah, you should be grateful and blah blah blah. So I'm just prefacing this because that gets tied in with like the immigrant mindset of like, we struggle to be here, I sacrifice so much for you, blah blah blah.
Mm.
So Catholicism and Hispanic culture in the United States has this kind of thing that goes together, is that kind of like suffering contest.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's where I experienced trauma, is that it was immersed in the culture.
Mm.
And so I learned to be like that. I learned to be very people pleasing. If it doesn't hurt, I don't feel like I'm working hard enough. Like I
Mm.
need to work, I need to work, I need to work, I need to sacrifice myself for others. And then I would be remiss to not mention the chauvinism that is uh like rampant, that I experienced because of just the way like certain other countries' cultures, like obviously our culture has that as well. I would say every culture does. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter you're in a Christian thing or in a cult thing. It's like that thing always rears its ugly head, like bigotry and all these things.
Yeah.
So that being normalized, uh, me believing, having that be repeated to me by uh, like mother and father figures,
Mm-hmm.
seeing it play out. Not that it's anyone's fault, because they're just repeating patterns that they've just seen. And so I
Sure.
don't blame anybody, but that in particular was very damaging
Yes.
to me, because it's so confusing. And sometimes like you'll have an experience that you didn't even feel like you had control over, and then it's like, so yeah, I would say those are big things, like guilt trips and slut shaming,
Mm.
and then
Mm.
yeah, just the way that the men treat women, and it's like, and then we all go to church and we just like forget about it. Like
Yeah.
I don't get that, you know what I mean? And yeah, that I would say those were two big ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are huge ones. Yeah. I mean, I can relate to, like the Ten Commandments being thrown around a lot, especially like as I got to be a teenager and started rebelling and doing all this crazy shit. Like my mom specifically would always throw out the like honor thy father and thy mother, and I was like, and I won't get into too much of my personal story and stuff, but later on, come to find out some family secrets and stuff, and it's like, this is total bullshit. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can't be saying this to me anymore. Like there's other commandments that have been broken here along the way. So let's not talk about this. Honor thy father and thy mother. When yeah. Anyways,
Yes.
but yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So did you ever go to confession when you were growing up?
Yeah, and I was
Mhm.
so gullible. I actually like would confess, and I would say
Really?
all this
Yeah.
uncomfortable shit to this guy that I don't know, and it was just like really weird. And
Yeah.
I felt like that, plus me like really like, that was a testament to me really trying. I really tried to believe this thing and play along and do all this, because I'm a Capricorn moon, and I feel like I can be like a robot, and I'm just like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is the right thing to do. So, and like I feel like I've also been raised by someone the same exact way.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's why I was so like into it, because I was just in the matrix, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Just in the matrix, and like for no other reason
Yeah.
than like I didn't wake up yet, you know.
Yeah. I love that you said that because it is totally like a religious matrix. I mean, it's within the like grand scheme matrix too, but like religion is a huge method of control within the matrix. Keeping people inside this box and not allowing them to break free of it, or making it really difficult to break free, especially in previous generations. I think now it's like, more people are waking up, not to be too cliche, but and starting to question things and think for themselves. And like, there's so much more information out there and so many more people to meet and all that, that it's easier to find answers to these questions now more than ever. But I mean, it's worked successfully, like keeping people small minded and keeping people in fear and keeping people controlled. And it is all a part of the matrix. It's where they want you to be, because then it's easier to do whatever grand master plan, like, is that's going on above, like by the whoever's in control. But really, like, they don't want you to know that we are in control of ourselves. And like, that's the big thing. They don't want you to look inward. They want you to follow this and look over here and don't look anywhere else, because then you might start to question things, and then you might, start to think for yourself. So yeah, I love that you referred to the Matrix in this context too. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So what were the best and the worst things about your religious upbringing?
I'm really excited for this question because I think people think like, I mean, I don't even want to know what people think about people who do the occult that aren't into the occult, but I
Yeah.
feel like there might be an assumption that you're just like atheist, you don't
Yeah.
believe anything, you're pessimistic, or you're this. It's like, but the thing is, like, when I started to become introduced to like the occult, I would say, just as a big umbrella, I realized that there was a place for my what is Sagittarius? 10th house? 9th house?
Ninth house. Ninth house.
Ninth house,
Yeah.
where for all my ninth house shit to go, because I have
Mm.
so many planets in there. And
Mm.
I'm very hyperbolic, I'm a big picture, I'm
Mm.
like leader type of person, and
Mm.
I fucking love ritual. I love,
Mm.
like, the thing I loved about being Catholic was I loved the Eucharist. I love the whole thing with the wine.
Mm.
I love that. I love the music.
Mm.
I love the art, the stained glass, the I was gonna say castle. Wow, Freudian
Yeah.
slip.
You like all
It's
the
basically
magic-y
a
stuff.
castle.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cathedral or whatever, the
Yeah.
church, the architecture. I love that aspect of it. I love ritual and I love the aesthetic because I
Yes.
do believe in, there's something in me that naturally wants to create a temple, like whether it's
Mm.
within my body, as
Mm.
I found with like all the lovely things on your page.
Mhm.
Um, like that type of practice is like about like you're the temple, but also I like the idea of having a space that is your temple. So
Yeah.
I've been interested in Japanese tea ceremony because
Mm.
they see tea as a ritual, and they have tea houses where it's completely clean.
Mm.
You wash your hands. You are mindful. You don't like you dirty anything. You're nice to each other. Everyone. Well, this is kind of, I don't know. Everybody shares the same tea thing, but maybe
Yeah.
not always.
Yeah.
But it's like a nice ritual thing, you know.
Yeah.
So I love that about it. And what I
Mm.
don't love about it is, I think that there is a danger, literal danger. I'm saying literal danger because I'm talking about when you take stuff too literally
Mm.
in, like, I'm not just talking about the Bible. I feel like in general in life,
Mm.
because you miss a lot of synchronicities and you miss a lot of magic if you take
Mm.
something too literally. There is a lot of symbolism in like everything. Like if you drive,
Mhm.
all of the little traffic lights and all of the signs and the ads and the
Yeah.
license plates, like they're all trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
Like all the angels, they're all around you and they love you, and it's like this is
Mm.
reality. But if you take anything too literal and you stop and you calcify it and you make it like really fixed, which is what's been done to the Bible,
Mhm.
uh, I feel like that's when reality starts to get really dark because you're not allowing synchronicities to come in and magic to come in.
Mm.
So that's what I don't like about it. It's people taking stuff way too literally,
Yep.
and then obviously the way that gets used politically, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, completely. I love sorry, Bella wants to like jump up on my lap again. Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. She has a mind of her own. I love that was a great answer to the question because first of all, I like to point out that like everything that you loved about the Catholic, Catholicism and your experience is all the magic-y stuff.
Yes.
Like yeah, like the temple and the Eucharist and like the
Vibration.
transubstantiation.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and the music and the art, like all of that is, and that was all my favorite thing too. I mean, I
Yes.
wouldn't say like I did like the ceremony aspect, but as a kid, I wouldn't have been able to put that into words. But looking back,
Exactly.
yeah, looking back, like I did like that because there was like I want to say a holiness about it, but because there is, but not just holiness because that sounds too religious. There was like, there's an actual spiritual component to it,
Right.
which is beyond just religion. I mean, it goes into the occult and ceremonial magic and anything that becomes like a spiritual practice, even these Japanese tea ceremonies that you're talking about. Um, and I loved like the Gothic style architecture. Like, I
Yes.
used to want to get married and something like that. Now I probably won't. But it's so beautiful to like see like all the
Right.
stained glass windows and stuff and the music. The music I was very involved like in the music in church because my mom was a church organist. She still is, and so singing in the choir and all that. Um, and yeah, and so that was always like my favorite thing, even if I didn't take it literally. Um,
Right.
so I like what you said too about the danger of taking things literally because that's I think where people get stuck. Like you said, it they don't want to see anything else. They become like blind to anything else. And I also love what you said about like driving and just like the little synchronicities, and I this is something that I've come to see more as I've gotten, more into spirituality is like sometimes you're at a red light, whatever, you can't escape it. But like if I'm in the flow, if I'm just like in my energy, if I'm going where I need to go at the right time, the lights are going to be green. They're going to
Right.
be green all the way until I'm there. And if there's any resistance, which, I'm not perfect. I'm not always in the flow. Sometimes I'm in a rush, sometimes I'm running late or whatever. But sometimes those red lights come up because like that's not the direction we need to be going,
Right.
and or sometimes you're going one way and like the turn light is green but the red light or there's a straight light is red and like you wanted to go straight but this way is telling you to go, and sometimes I'm like, well, I can go that way and just
Right.
see where you go, and yeah, I mean, I see like angel numbers on cars all the time.
Yes.
And sometimes, yeah, when you, I think when speaking from my own experience, but like when I first got into like symbolism and angel numbers and just all these things, like I saw it everywhere. I mean, things would speak to me from everywhere, like advertisements, even if it was just something, street signs. Like the
Hmm.
street signs that I grew up around all my life suddenly started to like have this deeper meaning that I would resonate with and be like, "Holy shit." Like it would just like hit some form of like identification in me that really just like gave me a spiritual experience in a way.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I like, yeah, but it wasn't until, I don't know, it wasn't until I guess I was searching without really knowing what I was searching for. And these, being open and not so narrow and rigid, believe, not that I ever really believed what the Bible was saying. I was always like, this is kind of weird. Here's Bella. But yeah, but I think,
Aw.
knowing a lot of like Christians and that I grew up with, like when you do take it so literally, like it's just confining. It doesn't allow you to explore, and it does keep you in that box of guilt and shame, because then I think a lot of Christians and perhaps people in other religions too feel so much shame and guilt and judgment on themselves because they are taking these things literally, and that's why so many of them are ignorant to others and judge others and all this, because if you truly love yourself unconditionally, no matter what you're reading or absorbing like from religion, you're going to love others the same way. But like
Yes.
if you're carrying a lot of that guilt and shame, most likely unconsciously, then you're going to be less tolerant to others like that have a differing, viewpoint or differing whatever, different, just come from different backgrounds. And so um that's, and it's hard, like when you're drinking the Kool-Aid for years and years, it's hard to stop drinking it. It's hard to have a taste for something else. So, and like you said too, like I don't blame anyone in my life for holding on to their beliefs or not being able to break free or whatever. But it's just something to observe now, and see the differences and see how it does like keep people stuck. But yeah, so for those
Yeah.
listening, like if you're driving now, like pay attention to the street signs and the green lights and the red lights, and notice like when you are just in the flow, when you're like at one with yourself, like notice how there's less resistance like in everything. And the synchronicities come more often, like do you want your
Oh.
kind of play? She wants attention right now. So yeah, I loved that answer. So do you consider yourself to have been like a magical or spiritual? It kind of sounds like yes, maybe to an extent, but like, did you have an interest in what the heck, Bella? Did you have an interest in like ghosts or fairies or it seems like you were drawn to the ceremony of religion, but looking back, like, were you a spiritual child at all? Were you empathic? Did you have these interests that were maybe suppressed by your religion, or what was that like for you?
Well, I would say, like you said, like you were like, I didn't know if I had a word for all that, like the ceremonial aspect of it. Like, I didn't know I liked the ceremonial thing, so it was just happening to me. And
Mm-hmm.
then one thing that happened to me that kept happening, well, I mean, well, to today, I guess, but I've had more control over it since I learned how to control it.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been able to see ghosts since I was little.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at first it was poltergeist stuff. So when I was very little, it was very terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister was also able to see some of the things, but it mostly happened to me when I was alone.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've always been very sensitive to it, and it got to the point where when I was more open to witchy stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I started to I didn't really know like I do now about hygiene, spiritual hygiene,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people's shit, like when I would talk to them, I would feel like at the time I had a lot of compassion and stuff, but it's just so much that now I'm like jaded. So I don't know if I could be a medium, but
Yeah.
like I'd be talking to somebody and I would be like, "Oh my god, like someone's coming through and they want me to talk to them." It's like it was too much. I let myself like too open and I didn't even ask for that experience. It just started to happen
Mm-hmm.
because I also started to get into the occult. So it was like so everybody on the other side is like, "Oh, she's open now.
Available.
She know
Yeah.
yeah, she's available." But
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger, it was more like traumatic shit that would happen, and shit with like like I would see like these wolves. Like I saw like this weird face. I heard like curse words and like things would like move around and like I had like a what is it? An incubus is the male version, right?
A
Yeah, like an incubus.
succubus or
Yeah, I
incubus
think
succubus, yeah.
yeah, it felt like male, so I feel like it was like an incubus.
Incubus, yeah.
And then, oh my god, so many things like that I've just been like frozen, terrified. And
Mm.
then I had moments of like sleep paralysis that I can't really explain if that's like necessarily a ghost or sleep paralysis, but I feel like on a physical level, sleep paralysis is the manifestation of some shit happening in the astral. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like I definitely experienced that stuff and it really is tied to your spiritual path and how aware you are because I could see where pockets of negative energy could have attracted a poltergeist
Mm.
or the way we bought that house. It was a house that the family house, you know,
Mm.
and I could see how that already had that in there. And then later on, when I wasn't aware of certain things, it was like certain entities started to kind of creep in closer.
Mm,
And then later on in life, more people and other things, attaching because I was leaving myself open.
mm,
I heard about the protection of innocence, like when you first start out in a new spiritual path and you don't know about like dark entities and stuff yet. You're not like aware. So there's a veil over you that I imagine your
mm.
spirit guides like help you with that because they're
Yeah.
like, oh, she doesn't know, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let's just, but eventually it's like, oh no, you gotta learn how to like do your protection magic because like that's part of the path, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And yeah, so I definitely feel like there was that, and I'm very blessed. But there was a period of time where I think I left myself too open because I didn't know what the dangers of that were. I
Yeah.
wanted to heal people. I wanted to be close to people. I wanted to network and just be more out there in the world because it was after a period of time where I was more like closed in and a little bit more fearful.
Mhm.
So I was starting to express myself, and I think I mixed with too many energies, and that really affected me because I have a very I don't know, my aura type just like absorbs people. So now that's why I got into this. I got into ceremonial magic because like you need to keep those energy vampires away. You
Mhm.
need to keep people that see your light and they try to suck it, even if they're your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your cousin.
Yeah.
That's who will use that against you. Like, oh well, blah blah blah. Like, no, like there's a certain level on earth that we have an agreement or something like that, but there's nothing that says that you have a right to suck my energy right now, bro.
Right.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So yeah, that's my rant.
Yeah.
um
No, I love that. And that is so important too, like the spiritual hygiene. And I hadn't heard of the veil of protection actually, or veil of innocence, or whatever you called it. But I mean, that makes sense because I feel like in the beginning of my occult experiences and ceremonial magic, like I didn't face any. I wasn't aware of the dark energies. I wasn't aware
right.
until I had like a few experiences that left me just like, holy shit, like what am I dabbling in? And felt it. I felt like the draining of my energy because I was just too open. And that led me, of course, to learn about like spiritual hygiene and all that. um and yeah, so I think it's just nice always to like reiterate for people that are in the occult, like to protect your energy and see where your boundaries are, as far as like how open you can be. But yeah, that's good. That's interesting that you had those experiences as a kid too, because I think that hello, I think that a lot of like yeah, excuse me, like I had several poltergeist ghosts. I was able to see ghosts as a kid and stuff too, and I think that led to being an openness to the occult and all that at a later time. So let's get into what you how would you describe your current spiritual beliefs? I mean, you've already kind of touched on it, but just dive a little deeper into that. Like, where are you at now with all of that?
Well, what's interesting is everything is still biblical.
Mm,
Um, it's just that I study the esoteric side of the Bible.
mm,
And so my thing is that it gives me some sense of satisfaction and pride and like joy
mm,
to take back the Bible in a sense. To take back the Bible and read it for what it really is, which is a mnemonics exercise.
mm,
It's written, I mean, it's poorly edited, as we all know.
mm,
But is something I think what makes something a holy text versus not is like because like it's so hard to like write a book, right? Like in
yeah.
any I don't care what like you're ancient, you're modern, yesterday, KDP, whatever, like it's
Yeah.
hard to write a book. But if
Mm,
it just comes out perfect, like I feel like there is something holy about that.
mm,
So there are aspects of the Bible that go together. I mean,
mm,
minus the poorly translated Hebrew,
Mhm.
because there's something, with Christians and Hebrew that they just tried to distort everything,
Yeah.
as we can probably suspect why, right? Because it's very, very wonderful.
Mhm.
Um, but aside from all of that, its structure, its stories, the things that it's trying to teach are instructions for specific things, and the Bible is only one book of many books. There are other gospels that have been discovered. There are other things that support other like other what's it called, like perspectives on the same
Mhm.
story.
Mhm.
So I like to see, what's really fun for me is to see the similarities among different religions, because
Mhm.
I like to see, it's similar to when you look at different news thingies, like
Articles.
news thingies, articles,
Yeah.
when they're like, okay, uh this happened, a tree fell, and then, like, this person saying, like, the tree fell, or the ground got exploded by the tree. It's like so many different perspectives,
Yeah.
but what is the thing that is the same of all of them?
Mhm.
You know that a tree was standing and now it is now on the ground.
Right.
So I like to find, like, okay, the flood, there's always a flood everywhere. That's
Mm.
not unique to Noah. It's that, to remember concepts that are important for your spiritual awakening. So this is what sums up my belief,
Okay.
is that to remember stuff, like the flood is significant, like this, that, the river Jordan, like all these things, like there are ways to remember things, like within the body and
Mhm.
along
Mm.
your spiritual path. And there are many books that do that. And that's why it's important to not take it literally,
Mhm.
because it's like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Like, I'm not going to be like, "Oh, do you have a real aunt named Sally?" No, it's just a game. It's like a thing to get you to remember
Right.
how to do this math operation that is really hard, because
Yeah.
spiritual awakening, and that's why the occult is the best, because it's a science. It's a science, and it's, you can find the answers. As Rudolf Steiner says, he's like, there's nothing that we don't know about. It's, we can know about it. We can identify it. We can find it out. There
Mhm.
have been people before. Like, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Mhm.
But it's like, it's a lot of information.
Yeah.
So anyone who can compile it for us and give us like the little Cliff Notes version,
Yep.
I appreciate that. And I feel like the Bible is partly that.
Mm.
But I'm going to try to trace back original Hebrew translations of certain aspects of it that I know have been taken out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. So how so what's your main method of doing of like dissecting the Bible, or what, how did you begin to do this? Like how did you begin to um drift into the esoteric version of the Bible at one point?
um, well, it always fascinated me that anyone who's read the Bible seems to be an atheist, and anyone who is a Catholic never read the
Right.
Bible.
That doesn't read the Bible.
I
Yeah.
like, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Um, so I was curious, that phenomenon. I noticed that, like, in high school and like
Yeah.
college, and then so I learned that there was, like, you could take a class on the Bible in college. Um, and I didn't end up taking it at the original college I went to, but then I went to another one and I was like, oh my God, I'm all about this. So we had like a textbook Bible, the
Mhm.
teachers talking about it like literature.
Mhm.
And that's what I mean when I'm like, don't take it literally. Like, you're not going to take Romeo and Juliet literally. Like, you're like, okay, this is a story to teach you to not be a fucking idiot. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Be
don't,
codependent. Yeah.
yeah, like, I mean, I don't mean to be mean,
No, it's
I
okay.
get it. They're only 13 years old,
Yeah.
but that's the whole thing, is like, that has symbolism in it. Like,
Yeah.
there's a, for example, like, oh, there's a capriciousness to youth that you can't, if you listen to it, there's danger. You have to think about what you do. If not, you could do something fatal. And it's so ironic that they both, whatever happened, it's like, there's a way to think about it. And I
Mhm.
feel like people don't want to do that mental work, where they're like, okay, this is an allegory for this, or this is a symbol for the sun, or like they don't want to think for themselves. So that's why they get taken advantage of. And I'm gonna say I'm gonna change my view, like the way I speak about this, because I know that it's really awful what people do with this book. It's really
Mhm.
terrible. But I'm gonna say that for momentarily, I'm going to take the stance that they are victims. You know,
Mhm.
they are also victims because it's a society, it's a politician or whatever it is that is using that against them. The
Mhm.
fact that they don't want to think for themselves. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I know that that is an awful crime and like people are responsible for that, but I feel like at the same time it's like, well, they're also being exploited by someone else because
Yeah.
they have that horrible trait, that sucks. But people should think for themselves and not be intimidated just because there are other smart people in the world. It's like you can be smart too. You are smart. I think
Yeah.
it's the fundamental belief that we're inherently terrible and stupid, and some people are stupider than others and stuff like
Mhm.
that. That like it just makes you not even want to try. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I like thought of this randomly, which you mentioned a while back, but I love that you had, that your mom would say these things like God's cool, like when you were
Hmm.
growing up and stuff, and when you got older. So, at what age? Kind of backtracking a little bit again, but at what age did you begin to truly like explore other things? Whether it was like different, like the esoteric side of the Bible, or when did you come across your first like occult book? When did the magic sort of journey begin for you?
Ooh. Well, I went through um it was a very traumatic experience where I realized I was met with like this isn't working for me when I was 19, because it was like parental figures imposing something that was like it didn't make any sense, and it was only based on the Bible.
Mm.
And it was very abusive. So, and I was terrified because I was still part of that mindset.
Yeah.
And I even went Oh my god. I even went to the church when nobody was there, and I, like, cried in front of the Virgin Mary statue, and I was like, "I'm so sorry for upsetting my mom," and, like, "Oh my god, I'm such a terrible person." And all I did was, like, I, like, snuck in a boy into my house,
Mm.
and I had never done that before,
Mm.
okay? And, like, it was like I had killed someone.
Yeah. Wow.
So, I understand I broke a rule, but I didn't kill somebody. I didn't do something
Yeah.
crazy, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that experience turned me inside out.
Mm.
I was completely devoted to this idea of like my mom's always right, my dad's always right, my aunt's always right, like
Mm.
adults are always right. I'm Catholic. It was just that he was the first boy who didn't treat me like crap,
Mm.
and I wanted to have an experience with him. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was 18 years old.
Mm.
And like, but the mindset, right, that I grew up in, that was very toxic. It just so that disrupted everything. And the fact that this particular boy was he wasn't Hispanic. He had more Americanisms, and he taught me about things. He taught me about like weird movies, and like he kind of changed my worldview. I mean,
Mm.
I wasn't like in love with him or anything like that. He just happened to be like my only friend at the time.
Mm.
So I ended up dating him because I
Mm.
was like, oh my god, my family shunned me. I felt so weird in my community. And then when you graduate, everybody like disperses, and I felt very alone.
Mm.
But it was more like the intellectual path, because I also have a lot of like Aquarius stuff.
Okay.
So I love that we're talking about this right now in Aquarius season.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but yeah, like it's the intellectualism, the curiosity that brought me there.
Mm.
So okay, I was like into uh crazy cool story. In college I was in this anthropology of religion class because of these interests that I had.
Mm.
And I had just made these two friends. One told me her dad was a Freemason and she was a witch or a Wiccan. Actually, she
Nice.
was Wiccan. And another chick, she was Jewish. And Jewish people and the Jewish faith has always been very fascinating to me because I grew up with zero Jewish people around me.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody,
Yeah.
just Catholics,
Yep.
and Baptist people.
Yeah.
And so they were like, "Oh, this guy from the library dropped off all of these books, and I know you were just asking me about like Wicca and stuff." And they literally just left these books, and it was like astrology for dummies, numerology, intro to Wicca, like
Mm.
um it was like something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so those were my first books ever, and I like devoured them. I was like, what?
Yeah.
But I would say I had a very limited and immature view of
Mm-hmm.
what all that meant, because first I was tripped up on the fact that witches were real. I was like,
Mm.
wait, you mean witches are real? Like
Yeah.
I thought that was just a movie thing. I thought that was just, you
Right.
know? And I was always kind of new agey and stuff, because my mom actually, she was kind of new agey too.
Mm.
It's like weird. It's like when people are like Catholic but they're also something else, but they kind of
Mm-hmm.
like don't really always lead with that. It's
Yeah.
interesting, but that had an influence on me. Like I knew about yoga and stuff. So but yeah, it was like those books, and then a lot of weird experiences, just like I said, mixing with a lot of energies, a lot of people when I was starting my career
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. And I went through a lot of stuff. And then it wasn't until after my Saturn return that um, this pile of books basically that had been given to me that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what they were. This is kind of a cool story
Mm-hmm.
from someone in college who was into the occult. I didn't know she was into the occult,
Mm-hmm.
but her and her boyfriend like introduced me to like metal and stuff like that. Because yeah, so I got into that through that, like a metal person, and then she gave me like a bunch of books, and then it wasn't until uh, quarantine
Mm-hmm.
that I opened up the book, and it was like the first one that I picked up was Israel Regardier's Golden Dawn.
Wow.
And I looked at it, I read the first page, and I really tried to give it a chance, but my brain like wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept doing my little witchy shit. But I would honestly say that I never truly believed in it
Mm-hmm.
the way that I experience. I wouldn't even say I believe in it. I know it. I experience it now. The
Mm-hmm.
blessings, the power, the protection, all that stuff didn't come until I learned spiritual hygiene. I learned rules and structure.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something missing for me from the craft because of how I am.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not like it doesn't work for people and stuff like that. But I don't resonate with people that are all about material thing. Not that I judge that as being bad. It's not that. It's that like if we're not here to grow in general, like I don't care if you're into magic or not, like I'm
Yeah.
just not really gonna like I don't know what to talk about then. If we're not
Yeah.
talking
Right.
about like yeah, like if we're not talking about like all the world, the different worlds that are beyond this world, then I'm not really
Right.
into it.
Yeah. I'm not here to talk about the Kardashians. I'm here to talk about, like, yeah,
I
any,
just can't.
yeah.
I just can't. I'll talk about like their astrology charts if you
Right.
want me to, but like I don't
Yeah.
know. I can't. It's hard to sometimes exist, but it's
Mm.
fun. I think that that's supposed to be like that. I
Yeah.
think that we're supposed to be able to dip in and out, and we're supposed to keep that sense of mystery, not only for ourselves, but like for other people, because we can't just like give it all away, and like they have to discover it for themselves,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the most that we can do is like plant seeds, like there's so many people that I would love to just like shake a little bit and like just believe this, or
I
not,
know.
not even get them to believe what I believe, but just like to open their minds.
To see,
Yeah,
yes.
to see. Yeah,
Yeah.
like you don't have to believe what I believe, but I just want you to question a little bit. I just want you to hear something new, I just want you to think outside the box a little bit.
Oh.
So, did you find, and are you still finding that as you've, gotten more into the occult and magic in your practices, was there a lot of like unlearning and reprogramming that you had to do and are maybe still doing around whatever dogma, religious dogma that you were just instilled with at a younger age, and tying this other part into this same question, like with the unlearning and everything, did you face any fears? Like, did you have any fears come up when you got into the occult that you were like, oh shit, like this is everything that like I was not supposed to do, or like this is kind of scary. So, yeah, so tell me about that a little bit.
I love that question. Those questions.
Yeah,
Well, the last thing you said before I go into the first one,
sure.
reminds me of an experience I had that when I truly felt the presence of an angel,
Mm.
I got freaked out at first because um, I never felt that before.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying is the difference between when I was like dabbling in a little craft, doing a little this and that, not really knowing what I was doing, mixing energies, like mixing spells. I'm like, no, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I'm like, this is for this, and I separated it with this cleanly ritual. Then this is for this, and I like it's very. Mm.
Yeah.
But when I truly started to get serious about the spiritual hygiene aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
It was like different from feeling a ghost, but because it was clean, it didn't have any personness to it,
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the density. And yeah, like it was just like really different. So that was the only thing that got me like a little freaked out. And then every time like I advance in my practice, I wonder if I'm advancing too quickly, but I feel that the times
Mm-hmm.
and where I am in my life,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that I have to advance quickly. I feel that we all need to advance quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope anyone hearing this right now, I really believe that we have to prioritize that aspect of it, the spiritual hygiene and the devotion to it, because it's a devotion to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that kept me going, even if I thought it was weird. And also just all of the lovely resources I have online, your channel, things like that, where I'm like, what are other people's experiences? I never felt unsafe because angels, man.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's also angels, you know what I'm
Right.
talking about.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
different kinds.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm saying like the ones that you know about, that like tried and true ones, it's like those they're just wonderful. So I would say that it exceeded my expectations of what I thought.
Mm.
And then the first question you asked was about any dogma that needed to be undone. I would say subconsciously, probably something that always came through. And I don't even know if this was just because of religious stuff, because I also heard this from my dad, like, but he wasn't necessarily religious himself.
Mm.
He's always questioning things. But it's more like just cultural. It was that I was inferior to men as a woman.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And that gets perpetuated obviously in religion and stuff like that. So that's why the witch thing appealed to me, because it's, and I imagine it appeals to lots of people, anyone femme presenting, it gives you this refuge.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of men too, like a lot of you know masculine presenting people, I love seeing male witches, I'm like,
Yeah.
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 um because it's like this weird reverse thing,
Yeah.
because sometimes witches be sexist towards dudes, and I'm like, girl, like, let
Right.
him do his thing, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
let,
Exactly.
yeah. So yeah, I would say it's that.
Mm.
But um, but yeah, I would say once I had a way out, I definitely was like ready.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I was ready.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say there was like a lot of undoing in that
Mm.
respect.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. It
So
was more
does
like
your
a Yeah.
Yeah, it was more like a blast off in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So does your family know about your current spiritual beliefs now? And do they, if so, are they like accepting, or have you lost some family in the process because of the differing beliefs? Or what was their reaction if they know about it at all?
Um, they don't know about it.
Okay.
But I think that I come off as a kind of new agey chick.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And it's funny because I remember reading, I think in the beginning of, I think it's the introduction of Golden Dawn, where, or another Israel Regardie book. It says that he used to mess with New Age people and like pretend that he was like all like, woo, like everything is true and blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he'd like laugh, to this lady, like she was in line with him somewhere, and they were like messing with somebody in line who's talking about astrology in that big kind of generalistic way that Aleister Crowley was,
Hmm.
very uh like critical of. Like it's like, no, it's very complex, like you can't just oversimplify this.
Right.
Um so I feel like that's how I'm viewed,
Okay.
and I'm cool with that
Okay.
because I would, it's too it's weird. I want to connect with like-minded people, but at the same time this is so sacred to me. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would never show somebody, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, but I have this urge to like connect with you, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
like want that sense of community. Maybe
Yeah.
because it's Aquarius season,
Maybe.
maybe that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just I'm drawn to people that are like me. We could just talk about this stuff. We could just like flip into that because I do like to talk, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's this weird dichotomy in me where I like wish kind of in a way that the world or whatever, I could talk to someone in my family about that, but they're too much in their worlds. Like it just wouldn't
Yeah.
work. The
Yeah.
only the only thing you can do is like things that are pretty mainstream. You could just talk about like, dreams, astrology.
Yeah.
I had a vision. Maybe sometimes,
Yeah.
some people respect that. Certain things,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that I'm happy just kind of appearing like a comparative religion, new age person,
Mm-hmm.
scholar,
Yeah.
and just like, yeah, yeah, I just, I'm just interested in that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, I can relate to that because I don't know, like my spiritual practices and my magic practices are very much my own. Like I'm rarely, I won't say never because I have a few times done magic with someone else, or not like, okay, there's been one time where we like were in the same room doing something together, but sometimes if that's happened, like we're just doing a ritual at the same time. But
Right.
95% of the time, my practices, my spiritual practices are very much just me and God, or me and the book
Yes.
that I'm working with. Like,
Right.
I don't talk about it while I'm doing it, I talk about it after the fact. But that being said, like, I do like to talk about it with other people who are also doing the same thing or similar things, at other times. Just not there's not a community really around, like, like there is when you go to church every Sunday and you're like with a bunch of people doing this whole service. It's
Right.
like, no, my service is just me and whatever. And I mean, maybe not as structured as like church or whatever, but that's fine. But yeah, but it is nice too, like, and I know I hear from a lot of people that are into this stuff, like how isolating it can be sometimes, because where do you go to find other people that practice these things, because you can't go to church and find it. I mean, like, you can't go to like a temple or something. I mean, and you thankfully, like, I have found people along the way. Hopefully you have too. It's nice connecting with people like you too, because like it's cool to see and meet other people that are into this stuff and have their own perspectives and their own beliefs. And even if what we do is separate, like we can talk about it, and form like a community based off of that.
Yes.
Um, So, do you still go to church at all, or no? Not really.
No.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah, I didn't think so. But
no.
yeah,
Uh,
just to clarify, yeah,
yeah, yeah, no, that, um, yeah, kind of like once I became an adult, it was like, no.
yeah,
But I've always been fascinated with like what churches are. Like we were talking about architecture and stuff like that. I'm like, if everyone's gone, I like that sense of peace. But at the same time, now that I know more about energy, I do not feel that the egregore of that religion is always good to hang out with. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah. I know
yeah,
what you mean. Yeah, yeah. It's hard to separate that energy when you're in a church, even if you're just by yourself, because like
right.
that's what's going on there. That's the energy that's built and created and consistent throughout it. So, yeah, like there were times when I was younger where I was just like lost, and I would also go. I've also gone to a church because I didn't know where else to go. And it was just me, it was just me and no one. And I would like pray or talk to God or something and just like tell him where I was at. And I didn't really find it that fulfilling because like I was still at church, and I was still like in the setting that I was traumatized from, whether or not it was the same church, like the specific instance was a different church, but it was still just hard to break away from like, okay, I feel like I'm just praying or trying to communicate with the same God that I've been like also kind of running from. And so, yeah, so I never really found that fulfillment or that connection. Like, I mean, I honestly found it not in a temple or a church or anything. I mean, I found it within myself. I find it in nature a lot.
Mhm.
I feel God by the ocean very often, just for me, or among the trees. I
Yes.
feel like I can hear my spirit guides better in nature. Um, to the point where like I really couldn't in church, but at the same time, at that time when I was doing that, I was a lot younger and not yet into my like spiritual and magical practices, so I didn't really know how to listen.
Mhm.
um but I don't think, well, if I were to go back to like a church now and try to connect with my spirit guides and stuff, I feel like they'd still come through, but it wouldn't be because I'm at church. It's just because
Right.
I have like this connection with them already, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're just a church, but we're still here. Like you could be out on the sidewalk and you'll still hear us." It's not
Right.
like I'm gonna connect to like this Christian God that I grew up with all of a sudden,
Right.
because and not that the God I believe in now is any different than that Christian God. I mean, she is, but just the being of God in general is like the same. It's just our perspectives that change along the way. Like my God that I believe in now is like still the same creative force, the same higher power, the same like friend, the same everything, kind of, but it's evolved.
Mhm.
But there's, yeah, and as like a monotheistic religion, like I don't know, like I mean, I guess I do believe in one. I mean, I do believe in one like creative power, creative force, like one God per se, but that's not to say that I don't believe in like other gods. Like Greek mythology gods. I believe that all of those things exist. All these other deities, all these
Mhm.
other spirits, even the saints. And not,
Yes.
I think honestly, everything that has been believed in at one point in time and now exists somewhere.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that doesn't make them any less important than the one God. Like it's all connected still.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's now I feel like I'm kind of going on a little rant, but
No,
yeah,
I love it. I love
yeah.
it.
But I think that, and I wonder like if people, okay, well let me ask you this question. Do you think that like anybody that you grew up with, anyone in your family, like were they do you think that they found true spiritual fulfillment in that religion? Like do you think that it can be found in like the Hispanic Catholic upbringing that you had specifically, or is there too much socialization or not socialization, just like structures that keep them from that, you know?
Um, Definitely structures that keep them from that because it's intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
Because that defines roles and things like that. And unfortunately, recently I've seen that some people are like I said, the language I'm choosing to use is getting taken advantage of. Okay,
Mm.
taken advantage of, getting their lack of wanting to think for themselves used against them because
Yeah.
of these beliefs, because of this myth upon which other myths can grow. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So there's that, but then there's like my mom is interesting because she always had an interest in more new agey type stuff,
Yeah.
being into yoga. So I feel like, and she likes angels,
Mm.
which is really weird because she has no idea like the angel stuff I do.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, she talks about angels, and I'm like, oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
cool, that's nice, you
Yeah.
know.
Right.
And I feel like that aspect of her has a little bit of a place to has wiggle room,
Mm.
and I see that that gives her fulfillment. So that makes me
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
When she switches, the thing is when people have a lot of conditioning, sometimes they switch to another thing randomly, and
Mm-hmm.
you're like, what the fuck was that? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They just like go to another. So if that happens, I'm like, I don't
Mm.
know. So that is why it's a question to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is it always taking a hold, or is she finding more freedom as she goes? And
Yeah.
everybody goes through their. We all go through our Saturn returns. We all go through our own unique paths.
Yeah.
So wherever she is along that spectrum, I'm not exactly sure, but I think if anyone has found any fulfillment, it's that in that she has a little window
Mm.
out of it. Some people I didn't even know were like that in my family, and
Mm.
they are like
Mm.
seeing news headlines pop up that I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, like I didn't know they were taken by these beliefs, and
Yeah.
now I see like, oh man, how are they gonna get out of this? I
Mm.
don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say I've experienced that dichotomy very recently.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it's not their path to get out of it, like,
Exactly, I've accepted that because I have thought that maybe like I want to help people and stuff, but it's like you can't interfere with someone's own karma and their true will, right? Like
yeah.
that is not something that, first of all, I don't have the energy to do that for you.
Yeah.
Some people see the reason why I found I love using the word spiritual hygiene.
Yeah.
Uh, the reason why I find that so important is because people think that I owe them that.
Mm.
People think that I'm supposed to give that to them just because I make them feel good,
Mm-hmm.
and that is just not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to fix you. I'm not going to do all this stuff for you. I'm not going to, I can't.
Yeah.
I've tried it, and it exhausts you, right? When you put energy into someone, they know what they're doing
Yeah.
sometimes. So I know I'm being very vague, but I mean that's been my journey with trying to help someone is they asked me for it. So if they didn't ask me for it, you bet I'm not gonna try and like make them see and do all this stuff because
Yeah.
it's futile. People
Yeah.
want to see what they want to see. Like I was saying before, it's kind of an energy saving scheme because you're just like, I don't want to think for myself, And they're not taking in good prana. So like how are you gonna
Mm.
expect them to like use more brain energy to understand something slightly different?
Yeah.
Like, hey, this blank is bad for you or something. If it's serving them in some way, they're not going to. And if
Right.
you love them in any way, you have to respect that they have their own path. So yeah, I love that you brought that up because that is a lesson that I've learned for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, me too. And sometimes it's hard to see because, you it's just I've witnessed such fake spiritual fulfillment in people, and it comes from a place
Mhm.
of like holier than thou, like this place of judgment where it's like, I love God, I love Jesus, but like fuck you if you don't, like, and like, to be very crass, like they're not like going around saying that, but and it's just like they're so, I
They
don't know.
are though.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes.
Yes, yes, sometimes they are, and they're so just like, I don't know what they get from it. It's just, it's, yeah, it's not the same thing that I receive. And I mean, there's a few Christians that I know that I've talked about in a couple other interviews. Really, like one who is so genuine and like loves unconditionally, and what I would say is like the true definition of Christianity. But I had somebody in another interview I did recently point out that he was like, well, I would argue that that's how your friend is, anyways, and not because of the religion, because of the
Mhm.
upbringing. And like, that makes complete sense. Like, I think she's just that kind of person, but she has also found, yes, maybe her faith and fulfillment in Christianity to whatever capacity. And that, like, that's great. I believe, I don't think she has that same desire, to branch out. I mean, she's in her 70s, so like it's never too old to do so. You're never too old to do so, but like it's just what works for her. And I won't
Right.
argue with that. Um okay, so let me get to the next question here. What would you say to the younger version of yourself going through this experience, or experiencing your old religion? Like, the younger version of you who felt unsatisfied or afraid or gullible or felt a lot of guilt, like, is there anything that your current self would say to your past self now going through that experience?
I would the thing is kind of what the one word or concept that got me out of the whole thing was the word intuition,
Mm.
because I read an article about intuition. I know it sounds really elementary, but I was really closed off, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And 19 years old, I read about intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going through something where my intuition was getting gaslighted.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my God, I've been right all along. And all of a sudden, my whole life flashed before my eyes. And I was like, I was right about this. I was right about that. I was right about that. I was blah, 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 all these things, because I was a magical child, a spiritual child.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow, some way, I always thought that I was wrong and other people were right. That's
Mm-hmm.
just, it doesn't matter who it was. If it was another chick girl my age, we're both 7, she's
Yeah.
right and I'm wrong. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
just about like adults and stuff, it wasn't just about boy or girl. It
Yeah.
was just like everybody.
Mm.
And so that word, had I discovered it earlier in terms of the weight of what it meant, um, at whatever age, I would have been happy even just 1 year earlier than that. I would have been like, your intuition's correct.
Mm.
But the way it hit me was like, when you learn about something, like obviously, ailments, diseases, disorders, they can be limiting if you name them, but they can be liberating if you name them. If you
Yeah.
say, I have this, wow, I didn't know, your whole world just opens up, and then you all of a sudden you can transcend it, right? Or
Mm.
something,
Yeah.
At least that's how I think, my ninth house stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so like that for me was huge. And if yeah, if at any age I would have figured that out sooner, that would have been saved me a lot. But I think that things happen for a reason, the way
Yeah.
that they.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, they do. I mean, one thing leads to another, and we wouldn't be here right now having this conversation if things hadn't
Yes,
like happened the way that they have so far. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. I don't know. I think, kind of turning the question to myself, like, I think that I would have just, as it relates to spirituality and what we're talking about, but just like, allowing me now saying to my younger self, like, just believe in yourself more.
Yes.
Like, just don't doubt yourself. Like, don't doubt the questions that you're questioning, your curiosity. Like, don't put the nail in the coffin of curiosity like everybody else is trying to do. Just go with it. listen to yourself, listen to that intuition, that intuitive voice. Um, and like you said, everything happens for a reason. I mean, maybe me speaking this out loud right now is telling younger me at that time to keep doing it, but you never know. So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I can relate to just like, I don't know, like just kind of being very private with my beliefs and thoughts um, and just not be, there was no confirmation that what I was thinking or feeling or believing was right, like, and so therefore I didn't always think it was myself. And that's also why I kept it to myself a lot, especially
Mhm.
when I began to like question things in religion. So, um, okay, so next question. Hypothetical, assuming you don't have children right now. Do you have children? I mean, maybe you do, but
No,
okay. Yeah, so hypothetical question. Would you subject your children to the same religious upbringing that you had?
no.
Yeah, okay.
I actually think it would be cool to like give them like resources to interact with fairies and
Mm,
dragons and Thelema and
yeah,
things that are just wonderful, that
yeah.
I personally find to be wonderful,
Mm.
and give them choices and fun. Sometimes I wonder, I have this hypothetical and I'm like, what if I had a child, which I never ever like would want to have a child. Like that's terrible.
Yeah. Okay,
Um
yeah.
but I'm like, what if I had a child and they were like, "Mom, I'm Catholic." And I'd be like,
No. Yeah.
I would be like, "You're not gay? What?" Uh, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. No, there was just like this joke about Lady Gaga that someone was like, "What if your child wasn't gay? Would you be mad?" And she's like, "Yes."
I think that
But
thought
yeah,
too sometimes. I'm like, what if my child ends up straight? Like that sucks. Like I don't want that. So yeah, no, I can relate to that thought, yeah.
it's just
Uh,
funny to like flip it around, and just be like,
right. Yeah,
um,
yeah. Yeah, a little role reversal. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's my take. I think that yeah, just like we should just let kids be what they want to be. Whether, I don't think that uh everybody has to always be like super gender neutral about everything. If that doesn't resonate with them, like, it's fine, whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the ideal, right? But like the issue is like that's not where we're at right now, so like whatever. But I think that certain people's journeys, like maybe they unfold a certain way, again, like a reason, not disqualifying any pain that certain upbringings have, but like it would be nice to completely let children choose all
Yes.
of that is within their domain.
Yes.
Gender, uh, little spiritual beliefs. I don't know if they understand the concept of religion. They just are like perfect already. They're
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like a fresh child,
Yeah.
straight from heaven.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that if I were to raise a child, I would be like, here's fairies, here's gods, like here's yoga, here's
Mm.
this is what your will is, but this is what it's not. Okay, we're not
Mm.
gonna be mean, blah blah blah. Like
Yeah.
use like the good things. Because I like to reverse things. I think that's like my Aquarius-y stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the concept of saying will and stuff like that, because it's like it's taking back that that ritual of saying grace over your food.
Mm-hmm.
So I would replace things that parents typically do with Christian children and make them um, fun, because at the end of the day, I believe that your religion should be fun.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I believe. Is your
Yeah.
religion should be so fun that you want to do it, and that you
Right.
would never think about killing another person, silencing them, hurting them, or insulting them. Like you're just so busy and happy worshiping whatever that
Mm-hmm.
you're just like, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But I just hope that this hypothetical child, even if they grew up like whatever, if that's your approach to Christ consciousness, as I would call it,
Yeah.
then that's fine, because I also have to be respectful. Like, I don't
Right.
believe in being like a total dick just because someone is,
Yeah.
understands things a certain way, because it's understandable.
Mhm.
I'm choosing right now, as you see me, I just made this decision before this call. I'm going to see it as they are sometimes victims,
Mhm.
of things. They meaning people who subscribe to certain beliefs that are just like probably make them miserable.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would want to raise a child, in a similar fashion, like definitely not growing up in with a religion or any sort of spiritual practice that causes fear of like burning in hell or something. Like I want it to be enjoyable. I want them to be curious. I'd want them to be have embrace that magical side of them. Like I was such a magical child. Like I built fairy houses all the time.
Yes.
I was very empathic, very like animal sensitive. Like I mean, and I've gotten back in touch with those abilities. But like they were shut down for a while because like you just grow up and like kind of lose that sensitivity because no one else is. I remember taking a poll in fifth grade asking if all my classmates believed in fairies, and one person said yes, and it was that she believed in the tooth fairy, and I was like, I guess fairies
What?
aren't real. Yeah, so I like it like shut down my beliefs in fairies as like a 10-year-old, and then for so long I just like went on. That was like what crushed my magical spirit, I think, for a while. Um, in a Christian school too, granted. So, yeah, but
Believe in yourself.
well,
Believe in
yeah,
yourself.
right. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would have been the ideal time to go back and tell younger me to believe in myself. Yeah, like you're not wrong. Everybody else just sucks because they don't believe in fairies. So
Right.
my life is more
Yeah.
colorful because I do. Yeah, no. I don't know. Maybe they do now, but probably not. I don't know. It was a very small school, but yeah. I mean, I think it's wise, and I think it's a wonderful way. Like, I mean, I don't have kids right now either. Maybe at some point in the future, but just to let them explore and let them, as long as they're not like a bad person, if they decide to be if they end up being a straight person and also want to go into Catholicism, that might be a test of my everything, but we'll work on it, as long as they're not like, I mean, I don't know anybody. I would really hope, and I don't think my kid would potentially be like, I really jived with this fundamental Baptist church that I went to, and I really liked it. And I'd be like, oh, like, let's not go back there, Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, I just like asking this question, like whether or not whoever has kids, um, because like it's a generational thing, like I find that my parents, a lot of my friends' parents, your parents, like they were more subscribed to this Catholic upbringing, perhaps, or at least one parent was. And before then, like there was less incentive to go out and explore, and so like in our generation, um, there's more information and there's more of like a curiosity and there's more of a waking up, and so going forward into like newer generations, I'm wondering like how will that be even more evolved, and how will that continue to take place in the future, and like how, like where does religion stand in the future? So which gets me to another question. So in this rapidly evolving world, do you think that it is beneficial, that religion having the same stronghold on individuals would be beneficial in any way, like to the evolution of like the future generations? Like, do you think there's a benefit to religion?
I think it had its benefits in the past. Like, the different eons,
Mm.
right? There's like the different eons. And those times when we needed to rally as a people to survive, like I don't know, like an ice age or something, or like whatever. It's like the Homo sapiens would not be alive if we didn't have that part of our brains that can get behind like a bigger purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, ninth house shit, right? Like we
Yeah.
all need the why. Every self-help book is like, what's your why? You
Yeah.
need a why. So if the why is, well, God said so, or like, well, Horus said so, or like blah blah blah. Even the Pharaoh said so, which is terrible, right? But like that, the good side of it is that it does make people come together.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, this eon that started like, I don't know, recently, whatever it is,
Are you referring to the Age of Aquarius, Eon?
I feel like I'm talking about two different things. I'm getting myself confused because I am talking about the age of Aquarius approaching, but
Mm-hmm.
also I'm talking about the eon of Horus,
Okay.
like being like, it's a time about the individual. So what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying is there was benefit to humans being collectivist in the
Mm-hmm.
past for survival.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater, be like, oh, well, fuck those lessons. Like, we don't need them because my grandma is toxic and racist and stuff like that. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's like there are things that your grandma taught you that are good that you should
Mm-hmm.
take with
Yeah.
you. Like, you should cook with good fats and, like, all these things, right? Like, all these
Mm-hmm.
good things. We shouldn't just, whoop,
Yeah.
and we should at least try to unify as a people. So we should
Yeah.
take all the lessons that we have from that collectivism and all of the things that maybe we are hurt by now, for alchemy, but
Mm-hmm.
also because it's like I feel like human knowledge is cumulative.
Mm-hmm.
Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Um, Moving forward, I do not think that that is beneficial
Mm-hmm.
because now we're all mixed in with each other. Like everybody can talk to each other. Everybody's cultures are on the internet. Everybody knows everything about everything. So
Mm-hmm.
you can choose.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about survival.
Mm-hmm.
And as we can see, it doesn't help us thrive. It
Mm-hmm.
makes people very unhappy. The
Mm-hmm.
most unhappy people are the ones that have rules for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe this wholeheartedly is that because I'm into like Carl Jung and like the way Israel Regardie makes it all, that it is all psychological.
Mm-hmm.
Um, while also being real outside of us too.
Mm-hmm.
But it is inherently psychological, and I believe that all of this master slave mentality has to do with how one approaches their relationship to the narcissist empath relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If one has not resolved that in themselves and they continue to be a victim and they choose that, they are likely to repeat that pattern and make someone else the victim of that. And that's what I see is happening.
Yeah.
And that's what the some religions, like, because of those chauvinistic things or those honor thy mother and thy father, like they vehemently enforce the master slave dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're not healed in that, you're using that to now hurt someone else.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a Stockholm thing. You're like, oh yes, please abuse me, and then, oh, now this is reason to abuse someone else.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's why it's not helpful. It's
Mm-hmm.
not helpful because you're just it's now just a tool for whatever.
Yeah.
In times when like the Gnostics and stuff like that, like I feel like they had more. I mean, there might be things that I don't agree with or something because I don't know a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but like they're at least trying to find God. They're talking about Christ consciousness. They're talking about what happens in the body and
Mm-hmm.
the spiritual path that resembles Christ
Mm-hmm.
as a story, as a metaphor for the Son. And that's it. I mean, like I said before, there's a lot more to it, which is why we need a whole damn book about it. And we need like numerology and like all these people to learn it and pass it on. And so it's very complex.
Yeah.
Um, but this isn't the way to like perpetuate the master slave thing. Like we have to move beyond that.
Yeah.
um you know and that doesn't mean like, oh, all is true and blah blah blah. Again, I think that what we're missing is we're missing a link between science and spirituality,
Mm. Mm.
because we need to check ourselves on this stuff. And that's why I love these occult authors, because they're about what's the science of spirituality. They're not like, ooh, let me read your fortune.
Yeah.
They're like literally against that. They're like, no, do not go to that woman. Like
Yeah.
she's just, I don't know, she's not really thinking about it.
Yeah.
If you're rooted in some knowledge, I mean, I believe in chaos magic too. Don't
Mhm.
get me wrong.
Mhm.
That is the truth of everything.
Mhm.
In a sense, it's like saying like everybody's pansexual. You're
Mhm.
just into, so if like you're heterosexual, you're just like, okay, well, you're just into women. Like you're
Yeah.
just a person who's into women and you're a guy, you
Yeah.
know? Um Chaos magic is like saying like, well, everything, as long as you believe in it, it works.
Mhm.
But there is an aspect of discipline to any type of path that you're trying to acquire. So yeah, I think that it's time to take responsibility for our own spiritual paths and not just outsource that to some Walmart of religion.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Walmart of religion. Yeah, exactly. It's easier for me to picture like the already evolved world where humans are self-realized and, at peace, and there's no more like wars based on religion. Like I can visualize that. I can visualize these people that have like acceptance for others and like are walking in Christ consciousness or whatever you want to call it, and are at peace with like their own spirituality. They found their own spiritual fulfillment, and not that it's all the same. It's just what works for that individual. It's
Yes.
difficult for me to picture the path of how to get there. Like I don't quite, I mean I can visualize anything. I can, assume and like make up stories in my head, but it'll be interesting because I do feel that like in time, and probably not in our generation, maybe not even in the next one or in our lifetime, that like I don't think we're going to get to that point in the next 100 years where everybody's just walking free and evolved, and nobody's, everybody, no one's like a slave to religion anymore. And if they subscribe to certain religious beliefs, I feel like it would be more of like oh, I'm taking this and leaving the rest, or whatever. Like I
Right.
like this part and I don't like that part. And I mean, I kind of do that with Christianity too, and some other religions.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't know. It'll be curious to see, whether we're physically in this body seeing it or seeing it from our little spirit selves in the afterlife or whatever. That like how that transition, how that evolution takes place, because I feel like the church is losing its power. And first of all, that's not to say that God is losing its power, her power. It's the church as a political stronghold force that it's become, and I mean, I could be wrong. Like I have yet to interview like a Muslim. I did interview like a Hindu, and I've yet to interview somebody who's Jewish. I would love to. So if you're out there and you're listening to this, let me know. I would love to interview you if you're happy to tell your story. Um, but I don't, just in my perspective, and I could be wrong, I don't view those religions. Well, maybe Muslim, because like there's a lot of followers, but I don't view them as having the same like stronghold of control as Christianity does. Um, and like I said, I could be wrong in that. Like now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like view it like picturing like Mecca and like Muslims like praying 3 times a day, and all this ceremony that they have. And I know that there's tons of history in there, and how that, I mean, I think that's the fastest growing religion, or was like 10 years ago at least, maybe it still
Mm-hmm.
is. In
Yeah.
and so now I'm kind of second guessing myself, and maybe all these Abrahamic religions, like Judaism, Muslim, and Christianity, maybe they do all have that same stronghold. But just in my perspective, growing up Christian, like it's like, yes, there's a message and an intention about connecting with God, but like I never felt like I was connecting with God in the way that I now connect with God. when
Right.
I was going to church, or and I never like it was all about like, oh, this is just what we do because we're supposed to do it because if we don't, then we're bad people.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, and so I don't know, like it'll be I don't know how it'll evolve in time, but it's kind of fun to think about. And, I mean, that evolution is already taking place because, like, there are more people thinking for themselves. There are more people diving into their own spiritual paths, beginning to question things. Hey, Bella. Um,
Uh,
they're beginning to wake up, so to speak, and that's not to speak for everybody, and but I think that that's how it begins. It's just little by little these waves will eventually get bigger and bigger until something topples over and a new foundation is built. And who's to say when that will be? But I think that that's the path that like we're going on now, is just human consciousness evolves because the truth will be the truth no matter what path you take to get there, right? Like,
right.
yeah, and so like the truth is will always remain. And even after these foundations crumble in time, perhaps, like there will still be like a universal truth, like a universal spirituality. There will still be like this belief in a creator or whatever, but I feel like just as many humans as there are individually on the planet can be as many different ways of connecting to that greater power, to that God, as there are, like, because everybody is like that, from that same, like, is created in that image, is
Right.
created, like we are gods.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody tells you that in church. It's very high, it's very based on like a hierarchy. And I feel like as people begin to take back their own power, then it'll just be interesting to see like the evolution of the times and stuff. So,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that's not something that we can necessarily, because of the nature of the occult and
Mm-hmm.
the nature of the universe, I don't think we can always see it on the surface. I think a lot more significant things happen on individual levels because at the end of the day, it's all about inside.
Mm-hmm.
An awakening happens inside. Where does it happen? What's the path? Where is it?
Yeah.
Right? But when you learn spiritual stuff, you learn about the worlds upon which these things exist.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we have words, you and I are speaking. We're in a different world. We're like on Mercury right now. We're
Yeah.
speaking. What you're like? Do your words even exist? I can't see them, but for
Mm-hmm.
some reason I hear them, and we're using words to manipulate energy. So it's like that's a different world than the physical world, like me touching here.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like what you're saying is probably interesting because it happens on an individual level. And inherently, I think anything any political establishment is showing,
Mm-hmm.
anything any kind of narcissist is doing, um, is always going to be contrary to the truth. And it was really refreshing to hear you say that the church is losing its power,
Mm-hmm.
because I was beginning to question that. So I want to say thank you for your presence, because I feel like nothing is more powerful than an awake person.
Mm-hmm.
And so connecting with you today is very important for me, for my sense of hope and health and connection and all that stuff. Like, it is very important for us to connect with each other.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Likewise. No, I just had chills when you said that. Yeah, no, it's an honor. I mean, it's been a great interview. And I love like connecting with people. I'm grateful that you were open to doing this. And yeah, and there is a lot of power in an awake person, in a free thinker, and
Mhm.
I hope that these interviews, my intention with these interviews is to inspire others to just or just plant a seed, whether it plants a seed, they learn something, they relate to something, whatever, maybe it inspires them, and also to provide you and other people I've interviewed with the opportunity to tell their story, and I find, I love that I've had, more people sign up for these. And there's like, there's similarities in the stories, right? Whether or not it was the same religion or whatever, but just in how the beliefs have evolved. And, I would consider everyone I've interviewed to be an awake person. And like, it's There's only been 5 so far. Like you're the 5th one, but like, hey, that's a great number. That's a great start.
Ooh, that's my number.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, so thank you again. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this today. Is there anything else that you would like to say just before we wrap up?
No, I guess quickly, I would like to say to everyone that truly in life, the the point of life is to feel joy. So whatever you choose, whatever path you choose, it should bring you joy.
Hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful, beautiful place to close. I agree. I think that what brings us joy should be pursued wholeheartedly, and what doesn't should be left behind. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Veronica, the Red Lady Veronica, it's been a pleasure having you on the channel today. We will go ahead and wrap up. So, if everyone has made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. If you are interested in doing a video with me on your own, like reach out to me. I have a post, you can message me on Instagram or send me an email. I'll post my email in the description box below. And yeah, and thank you again. I hope you guys enjoyed. So, oh, and also like and subscribe this video and or like this video and subscribe to my channel and all of that if you're not already. So, all right. Well, thank you again, Veronica, and until next time, guys. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.